Welcome to San Mateo County Today. Conversations with government leaders throughout San Mateo County. Here's your host, Linda Morrisey.
Welcome to San Mateo County Today. My guests today are Ann Campbell, the San Mateo County Superintendent of Schools, and Jeff Gee, the Mayor of Redwood City. We're going to start by talking with Ann. Ann, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you. I'd like to start by having you give people a little context so we can sort of move into more specific questions. What is it that you do? What are your responsibilities as the superintendent of schools?
That's a question I often get asked, actually. The county superintendent of schools is, in California, a constitutional office that dates back to 1849, actually.
Wow.
And in most of the counties in California, it's an elected office, and that's true in San Mateo County. So the county superintendent is elected to a 4-year term. And in the Constitution, it says that my job is to superintend the schools of the county. So that's what I do. But there's some very, very specific legal responsibilities that I have.
Okay.
And probably the most important one is to be sure that all of the school districts in San Mateo County, and we have 23 of them, are in a good place as far as fiscal stability is concerned. So every year, school districts submit to my office their budgets, and then twice during the year, progress reports on how they're doing. And we look at their budgets very, very carefully to be sure that their revenues and their expenditures are in sync and that they'll be able to meet their budgetary needs for this year and then the 2 subsequent years. And if all that's in good shape, then we give them what's called a positive rating. And if we're a little concerned about them, we'll give them what's called a conditional rating and work with them to be sure they get back into sync.
Okay.
And if for some reason they're really in difficult financial difficulties, we will give them what's called a negative rating, and then we become very involved in their district operations to get them back to a place where they're operating in a solvent condition again. And that's all an outgrowth of a while ago when several school districts in California, most notably Richmond and Oakland, were not in good shape financially, and it caused tremendous problems. So the thinking is that the county superintendent's the ideal person to be kind of that intermediary between the state and the very local level.
Okay.
So we do a lot of other things as well. At our office, one of the main jobs we have is to be sure that we're getting our school districts all the support services that we need and that they need. So we help with special education, and we provide classes for kids who have very difficult special education needs that it's better to bring them together throughout the county because an individual school district couldn't take care of them. We do beginning teachers support and assistance for the beginning teachers and for administrators as well. We run the court school program up at the juvenile facility up on Tower Road. And we also run a community school program for students who perhaps have been expelled from their school districts or are experiencing difficulty in the more traditional high school setting, and they need a different type of academic environment. And then a really exciting new area that we're very involved in is the whole world of early care and education, and being sure that in that 0 to 5 age group that kids are getting the very best start that they can so that when they arrive in kindergarten, they're really ready with the skills that they need to thrive in school.
Ready to go. Great. Lots going on. It sounds like it's a challenging job given there will always be budget and financial constraints. I know that a key initiative right now with the Office of Education is a program called the Big Lift. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the goals of that program.
Sure. Thinking in the world of early care and education, there's a group called the Peninsula Partnership Leadership Council that's led by the Board of Supervisors and Supervisor Carol Groom, by the Silicon Valley Community Foundation and Erica Wood, who's the vice president there, and the County Office of Education, and I represent us in that organization. The Peninsula Partnership Leadership Council is basically a group that brings together anybody in our county, agency, nonprofit, governmental group, whatever it may be, that focuses on children and youth, to be sure that we're serving the needs of that population in our county. And a couple of years ago, the San Mateo Youth Commission together with the Board of Supervisors, and then all the school boards and city councils and the Assembly and Senate in Sacramento adopted a Bill of Rights for Children and Youth, which is a wonderful statement about what we think life in San Mateo County should be like for our kids. These wonderful glowing statements, and that was all well and good. And the PPLC said, well, wait a minute, we need to make that Bill of Rights a reality for our kids. And so we, as part of the Peninsula Partnership Leadership Council, spent about a year studying lots of data about children and youth in our county so that we could really begin to hone in on an area that was actionable, that we could marshal the community's support behind. And the data point that we kept coming back to was that in San Mateo County, 58% of our third graders read proficiently. That means that 42% of our third graders, almost half, aren't reading where you want them to be reading when they leave third grade. And why that's so important is for the first couple of years of school, kids are really focusing on learning to read, and they're getting their decoding and vocabulary and comprehension skills down. But then when they hit fourth grade and beyond, a lot of the knowledge that they gain comes through reading. So they need to really have those skills in good shape. And so we said, okay, we want to make a major change in that. By 2020, we want to be sure that 80% of the kids in San Mateo County are reading at grade level, and then we want to take it up year by year. So what do we need to do to make that happen? And after studying it and really thinking about it very carefully, we came up with 4 areas of emphasis. And one is that all 3- and 4-year-olds in San Mateo County should have access to universal quality preschool. All of the kids in San Mateo County should have access to inspiring summer programs. There's a huge amount of learning loss that happens during the summertime for many kids who don't have access to the kind of quality summer programming kids whose parents can afford that type of activity have. We want to be sure that kids are in school. If you're not in school, you're not learning, and chronic absence can be a real problem, and that actually starts very young. It starts in kindergarten and first grade. You can, by looking at those attendance rates, predict who will be absent as they hit middle school and high school and drop out. And then the whole foundation on this, what this is built on, is that parents and families need to be very involved in all of this work as well. So what we're doing right now, thanks to the Board of Supervisors and the voters of San Mateo County who approved Measure A, the Board of Supervisors recently allocated $10 million to put towards beginning to work on the preschool part of our plan. And we've had a group of real experts in the field develop a program for targeting preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds in the 11 school districts that are underneath that 58% proficiency rating. And we're just getting ready in just a couple of weeks to begin to accept applications from those school districts and community organizations within whatever community it is that the school district is located, to say, okay, by coming together, we're willing to work together with the Big Lift to expand the number of preschool spaces in our community, and to be sure that every preschool space in our community, whether it's existing or about to become, is a quality preschool space as well.
Got it. We could talk about that all day,
we
I'm
could.
sure. Another important initiative, I know, especially in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy, is your Safe Schools initiative. So tell us just a bit about that program. I have another question I'd like to ask you about the structure of it, but the goals of the program so that something like that never happens.
Yeah, so the Coalition for Safe Schools and Communities came about as a result of the Sandy Hook tragedy, and thanks to Congresswoman Jackie Spear and Supervisors Adrian Tissier and Don Horsley, Sheriff Greg Monks, and the County Office of Education as the leaders in the county who really touch youth. We said, you know, we need to bring everybody together. We need to bring schools, law enforcement, mental health agencies, everybody who takes care of kids in one realm or another, together to say, as a community, we need to join forces to really make sure that we don't have a situation like happened at Sandy Hook happen in San Mateo County. And we held a convening in April of 2013 and had several hundred people attend from all the cities and county school districts throughout the county. And out of that day came a commitment to have 3 work groups to really begin to make sure that we are fostering safe and supportive schools and communities. And those 3 groups focused on information sharing amongst different agencies, on making sure that schools have and law enforcement agencies have a common protocol that we follow if there is an emergency at a school site.
Right.
And that can range from an earthquake, and what do you do in the case of an earthquake, to an armed intruder on a campus and everything in between. And then the mental health aspects of the issue as well. Thinking that we have our protocols for safe schools that we're working together with law enforcement on, that's a reactive type of a response to a situation.
Right.
But we want to be proactive. And so the mental health and the information sharing part of it is more our saying, this is how we're going to organize ourselves to really get services and information out so we can basically intervene before something was to happen.
Great. Okay. You've actually answered my question about how the different agencies will work together, so thank you. I know that your budget now has what's called a local control funding formula.
Which is a mouthful.
Which is supposed to simplify the way state funds get allocated to local education agencies. How's it going to make it simpler? Don't give us the formula. I have a feeling it's complicated, but how's it going to make it simpler?
Well, the idea is that before the local control funding formula, California schools had just an incredibly complex funding system. And we won't go into all the details of it, but it was just really Byzantine. And so one of the real concerns about the way that the funding system was working was that dollars weren't getting to kids who were most in need of them, and that there were gross inequities between what different school districts were having to spend on students.
Right.
So what the local control funding formula does is several things. It says we're going to establish a base level of funding that we think is the right level of funding for every child in California, and that varies a little bit if you're a high school student or a kindergarten student, but there's a definite target that we're trying to reach. And then we're going to start allocating dollars to school districts if your target is here, so that you're getting to more of an equitable place and you're actually here. The state government's going to give you more money each year until we get all school districts into a pretty equitable range of funding. But there's another part to it as well, and that is that there are 3 groups of students for whom you really need to pay extra attention if they are enrolled in your schools. And those include children who are living in poverty, children for whom English is not their first language, so they're English language learners, and then children who are in the foster care system. And so what the local control funding formula says is, okay, school districts, we're going to give you all this base amount of money, but then for every child that you have or young person that you have that fits into one of those 3 categories, we're going to give you supplemental dollars, and we're going to give you several $100s more per child, with the expectation that those dollars will go to be targeted to meet the needs of whatever the child's particular population is. And if you're a school district where you have more than 50% of your kids falling into one of those categories, we're going to give you what's called concentration funding. And so you get even more money generated by each of those students over that 50% mark. And the idea behind that is that hopefully the dollars will flow to the children who really need those extra services. And so then in place, and that's another role that my office is playing now, is there's something called the Local Control Accountability Plan. And every school district in California now has to write a local control accountability plan that shows how they're using those dollars to provide services for the students who are generating the funds.
Got it. Okay. One last question. We're almost out of time, unfortunately. I understand that 14 local schools were awarded the California Distinguished Schools Award this year. So I drive by these schools and I see the signs sometimes. What does that exactly mean?
It's a great honor, and we are so proud of the 14. We have 14 elementary schools in San Mateo County this year who were awarded Distinguished School status by the California Department of Education. That's the most we've ever had. And I think it's a great testimonial to the amazing work that's going on. We have 174 schools in San Mateo County.
Okay. I'm sorry we have to wrap up. Thanks so much for sharing all this good information with us this morning. I hope you'll come back and join us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Linda.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking with Mayor Jeff G. of Redwood City. Welcome back. We're now talking with Mayor Jeff G., Mayor of Redwood City. Welcome to San Mateo County today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. There is so much going on in Redwood City right now. As you just drive down the street and you can look in any direction,
Absolutely.
you see something going on. So I wanted to start by talking about a lot of the residential housing that's being built. I know that it's a strategic initiative for the city to provide a wide range of housing to all income levels. So tell me about some of the projects and how it's meeting that need.
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit. The vision for our downtown started about 20 years ago with a community task force. And that community task force was challenged with where we were at that time. Downtown Redwood City 20 years ago was kind of dead, kind of quiet. I was talking to someone who said her parents wouldn't even let her go out at night because of all the bars and all the drunks. And so it was that vision that we could not just maintain the status quo and we needed to do something different. So a group of citizens was formed and they were challenged with a creative vision for our city and what we wanted it to be. We want it to be a vibrant community, full of life, full of retail, commercial, things happening 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day. The council embraced that vision and started putting the bones in place. Our outdoor living room, what I call our Courthouse Plaza, our Century Theater, and now we have Broadway by the Bay, Fox Theater, Dragon Theater. We wanted to become the entertainment hub, the restaurants and the bars, and what was missing are then the residential components, where you have 24/7 people living downtown, eyes on the street, coming home, wanting to walk somewhere, and that's what's happening now. Along with being right next to the train station and being able to use that as an alternative than just driving on 101. So we have now about 2,000 units of housing in the pipeline, some being finished, some just starting construction, trying to meet the need of housing. We have over 40,000 people that drive into Redwood City from outside to go to work. So hopefully we can make a dent in that. There's no question that we need to provide that diversity of housing, and we're looking, and I'm looking to provide our next step is along El Camino Real, taking that same vision, forming a new vision for El Camino Real, and where we can increase the diversity of housing along that transit corridor.
So affordable housing is such an issue for the Bay Area. So you're feeling that Redwood City is going to be able to meet that need for all income levels?
That is our goal. We want the diversity of housing along with diversity of jobs, and I think that's what makes us very special, how we survive the recession. We have tech jobs, we have blue-collar jobs, we have service sector jobs. That diversity, along with diversity of housing, is going to sustain our city for a long time going into the future.
Got it. Let's talk a little bit about infrastructure. I know that you bring a wealth of expertise in the transportation area. Tell us about the 101 Redwood, or 101 Woodside Road interchange. What's that going to look like when it's done?
I'm not sure I can tell you today here yet, but what I am excited about is through our city and working with the Transportation Authority, we have started the environmental work and the design work to replace the oldest freeway interchange in San Mateo County.
Is it really?
If you drive 101, you can get stuck in the line behind that interchange for a long time. And by the end of the summer, around August, we'll start to see 2 or 3 or 4 designs on what the interchange could look like. It's just a conglomeration of streets coming together at wrong angles or funny angles that adds to the congestion. But I'm very, very hopeful that in the summer of this year and in 2 years when we finish the EIS, it takes too long from my perspective, but by the year 2020, hopefully we'll have a new interchange completed and servicing the Redwood City area.
Got it, great, okay. Another project that I think is really visible, and if you're doing that 101 corridor, you probably see it every day, is the Malibu Grand Prix property.
Yes.
What's going on there?
That is probably going to be, it's been bought by a developer, and they're probably going to come with an application to put an office development there. It was part of our Inner Harbor Task Force. We have a unique situation where we have the Malibu Grand Prix, Docktown, and the city and the county owns several properties right there against the water or by the water. And so for the last year, we've had a citizen committee again, because that's how we do things in Redwood City. What should our vision be for that part of our city? And a lot of it has to do with how much open space should there be, what kind of access, connecting the main city to the water, and then how do we maintain a floating home community. Right against the freeway, I'm open to an office development because we have the freeway right there, but I also want to not have a wall between our city and the water. And so we'll see what the developer walks in probably in the next 6 months with a proposal to develop something there.
Okay, a floating home community, houseboats.
We have that. Yeah, we have houseboats there at Docktown right now. We have about 70 residents down there.
Awesome, cool. I understand that Kaiser is opening up a new hospital in 2014. I drove by there the other day. That looks like it's almost finished as well. How do you see that new hospital impacting the city?
I think one of the unique things is we have actually 3 hospitals. Sequoia Hospital opened just recently, Kaiser at the end of this year, as well as the Palo Alto Medical Foundation in San Carlos, right there at Holly and 101.
Right.
I think what that tells us is that we have changing demographics. One of the largest growing segments of our community is our senior population. And with all of us growing older, we need a little bit more medical attention than we may be when we were younger. And so with 3 hospitals here in the region, I think that was just a great opportunity to provide the medical services that our growing senior population will need, as well as 21st century facilities.
Got it. So a lot going on in Redwood City, a lot of very positive things.
Yes.
What do you see as some of the challenges the city's facing?
Going back to your first question about construction, I haven't figured out how to do it without noise, dirt, and dust. And so for the next 2 years, as we finish projects and start, it's going to be a little harder. And I've talked to the contractors as recently as last week. I've reminded them, I've welcomed them to our city, but I've also had to remind them that they're inserting construction into an ongoing neighborhood. We have people living downtown, we have businesses living downtown. We can't disrupt their lives too much.
Right.
So let's do it in a respectful manner. Let's try to do it as quickly as we can and not disrupt their lives and their businesses. So that's one of the biggest challenges. The one that comes along with that is people are used to parking whenever they want in front of the store they're targeted to going, and not a block away or 2 blocks away.
Right.
Give me 2 years, this will be all done, and we'll bring back a lot more parking than there ever was. The big project downtown with the steel crane, the high-rise cranes, there'll be 1,000 parking spaces underneath.
Really?
Available to the public nights and weekends, of which 300 will be validated by local stores.
That's very good news.
Right now, they're not there, but when this project is done, they'll be available to the public.
Great, great. I know that shared services is one way to help with financial sustainability for city. And I understand that we have a shared services agreement now between Redwood City and San Carlos for firefighting services.
Yes.
Tell us about that, that collaboration.
That's one of the great accomplishments of our city, working with San Carlos. And I give my credit to San Carlos colleagues that they elected, to having the courage to open up and take a look at, can we do it a different way and can we do it a better way?
Yeah.
That collaboration has been a tremendous success, and we're looking to further that with the county and Woodside. I mean, there are fire stations between ourselves and Woodside that are within 2 miles of each other. Now, can we find a better way to collaborate, reduce our costs, and provide better service by putting a fire station in a better location? But while that has had the headlines, we're very fortunate. We have over 30 contracts with other cities providing different kinds of services. Fleet management, IT, payroll, HR. My hats off to our staff and to the leadership who have been able to figure out how to do it better, and then how to do it better than other cities. And so they're contracting with us to provide those services. So the more we can do together at lower cost, then those cities can then have revenue to do things like parks, recreation programs, and infrastructure improvements in their own cities.
Right. So shared services just not out on the street, but actually in the office as well.
Absolutely.
You said HR. Can you say a little
where
bit about
we
that?
can help with administering benefit programs, where we can help with payroll, making sure people get paid on time and cutting their checks. They still say the city of, but Redwood City staff is behind the scenes processing.
Okay.
Our IT staff is tremendous. They're providing IT services to a number of cities around the county.
I didn't know that.
So, I mean, economy of scale, the efficiency, having the right staff, it sure beats having everyone their own staff and their own organizations.
Absolutely. I see Stanford. I see medical offices. I see a speaker series. So it looks like you're building a relationship with Stanford University and hospitals. Can you say a little more about that?
It goes beyond the hospital and clinics. Stanford University, like many of the older universities, are landlocked. Mm-hmm. Growing student population, growing academic programs. And so Stanford's made the decision that the main campus is going to be preserved for academic programs. But to make room for that, some of the other functions that we just talked about, HR, IT, payroll, they don't necessarily need to be on campus. Maybe they could be somewhere else. So Stanford, beyond the hospital and clinics, owns over 30 acres around the hospital and clinics. Mm-hmm. And we have approved Stanford to build 1.5 million square feet of new office space for those functions. But in the conversations with Stanford, when those properties are occupied by Stanford, they come off the tax rolls. So how do we compensate the city and our community for that? We weren't looking for just money. We were looking for things that were going to benefit our community in a true partnership. The speaker series is part of that partnership, and I don't know how many people went to that, but it's fantastic. Tara Vonderveer, coach of the women's basketball team, J.B. Struble, co-founder of Tesla, talking about innovation, education, and leadership. And the cost to the public is free. Entrepreneurial Boot Camp, 2-day workshop with the Graduate School of Business with faculty leaders, $1,000 per participant, along with funding to fix our flooding, along with funding for the Ed Foundation, along with other programs. We wanted to build a true partnership with Stanford, and they reached back and said, yes, we want to be your partner. And that's kind of what we are striving to do in Redwood City, is develop partnerships, because we can't do it by ourselves. But with community, with Stanford, with business leaders, we have been able to forge wonderful programs for our community because of working together.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful to see that type of collaboration going on the peninsula here. That's very interesting as well. I want to thank you for joining us today. Our time is up, but great information. We hope you'll come back in the future and share updates with us.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. I want to thank both Ann Campbell and Mayor Jeff G. for joining us today on San Mateo County Today. We look forward to seeing you next time.